Welcome to this video on how to deal with uncertain times or liminal space. Liminal space is a concept that's been talked about a lot lately. If you're like many people, you may not have noticed that there are certain places or states of being in which you feel different, off, or uncomfortable. Often these uncomfortable spaces turn out to be liminal spaces. You can define liminal space in several different ways. It's talked about as a threshold, and indeed the etymology of liminal comes from the Latin word meaning limen, which means threshold. Liminal spaces are transitional or transformative spaces. They are the waiting areas between one point in time and space and then the next. So some examples of liminal spaces: when you break up with your loved one or your marriage breaks up. When you get sick, I mean really sick, like cancer. When you lose your job and there's great uncertainty around the future. Natural disasters such as an earthquake, a tsunami, and other forms of natural disasters like a virus outbreak. What is the nature of liminal space? You do not control the situation. The liminal space causes your world to fall apart. Business as usual cannot run. The liminal space causes us to reevaluate our perspective and worldview. And how do we respond? We can respond with fight or flight. And obviously we have various physical reactions. Our heart starts moving, our pupils dilate, we tremble, we sweat, we're pale. The fight or flight response, also known as the acute stress response, refers to a physiological reaction that occurs in the presence of something that is terrifying, either mentally or physically. The response is triggered by the release of hormones that prepare your body to either stay and deal with a threat or to run away to safety. By priming your body for action, you are better prepared to perform under pressure. The stress created by the situation can actually be helpful, making it more likely that you will cope effectively with the threat. This type of stress can help you perform better in situations where you are under pressure to do well, such as at work or at school. In cases where the threat is life-threatening, the fight or flight response can actually play a critical role in your survival. By gearing you up to fight or flee, the fight or flight response makes it more likely that you will survive the danger. And so from the Franciscan friar Richard Rohr, he suggests in the book Adam's Return 5 things that we can learn from liminal spaces. That life is hard, life is suffering. 2, you are not the most important person in the world. When you think about it, we're very small in terms of the earth, the solar system, the universe. We're only here for a short amount of time. And 3, your life is not about you. And so really, your life is about others and about a bigger picture than you realize. The 4th thing is you are not in control. And the 5th thing, you are going to... Once we learn to accept these, they no longer hold our attention because they're part of the nature of life and they're part of the liminal space. In ancient indigenous religions, they would try to bring their young people ahead of time into liminal space. They would teach them how to survive in liminal space in things like initiation. Unfortunately, because of the loss of religion and culture, we have a disconnection from these sacred forms of entering into these liminal spaces ahead of time. So, for example, Richard Rohr talks about a trip he made to Western Australia more than 10 years ago now, where he encountered an ancient Aboriginal culture that would take their young males to a sacred canyon. And basically, in that canyon, the males would be left there, possibly for weeks, even months, until they had learnt how to build their own stone axe. The trick was they weren't given instructions on how to do that. They had to work it out from themselves. Once they had done that, they were ready to return to the tribe and the community when they learnt the connection between suffering and death and life. Also in Aboriginal culture, walkabout. Aboriginal cultures have a rite of passage known as walkabout. Adolescent males spend up to 6 months on foot tracing paths established by their ancestors. Those journeys can be as long as 1,600 kilometres, and the young men are expected to complete this without a compass. Although adolescent girls do not traditionally take part in walkabout, the 2002 movie, which I recommend to you, Rubber-Proof Fence, tells a story based on historical events that actually occurred in 1930 of 3 young girls, Aboriginal girls, who were taken from their family under Australia's so-called half-caste re-education system. And they actually have to move through a liminal space of suffering to find their way home, and then they're very uncertain. They don't know what's going on. Watch the film. They undertake a journey on foot of more than 1,000 miles and eventually arrive home. Their journey does not count as a walkabout as such. However, it does suggest that the girls were able to undertake the challenge because they did not think it impossible to walk many miles across barren landscape. The girls were, in effect, observing a cultural norm. And so some strategies to use. Are you flexible? Are you willing to change your mind about things? Are you willing to adapt? Connection, communication, both to people, but also the creation around you, to nature, is critical in this. But stay grounded. And there's a number of strategies we can use today to keep us grounded. I often use journaling. So each day or every second day, at the beginning of the day or the end of the day, spending maybe 10 minutes writing down what's happened. Deep and meaningful conversations help us to interpret and digest what is happening. To exercise, to physically spend maybe 20 minutes doing a exercise workout program, maybe Tai Chi, maybe a martial arts in our own space. Mindfulness, using a word like Maranatha repetitively over and over again for maybe starting with 2 minutes, then 5 minutes, then 10 minutes. Then over maybe a month, realizing I'm already up to 20 minutes. But what an amazing effect mindfulness meditation might have. To pray with others, the power of prayer can change things. To draw or colour, using mindful colouring in. And you can see on that picture just there what can happen. And I actually encourage you, maybe go to Google, type in mindfulness colouring in pages and print some off. Do it as a family, recommend it to your friends. Watch a reflective movie. This is a brilliant movie, 2040. It reflects on our life now and then it beams into the future. It will change you. And obviously it's very reflective too. Walk your dog. Or your cat if you have one. Learn a new instrument. Play music and sing. Plant some seeds with your kids or maybe your cousin. Garden. Play board games. And lose if you're playing against maybe a 5-year-old who, you get it. The last thing is to sleep more. And often today we get distracted by our devices. Put the device away. Don't even put the device in your room. Sleep has the power to heal. And at different times in my own life, I've approached professional counselling, just somebody to talk to. And this helps us to clear away the cobwebs and to get that thinking and negative thoughts out. So we need to gain wisdom. So in our life, we need to look for maybe 2 or 3 wise elders, openly talk to them regularly. Someone who has been down the road of life's journey longer than you have, such as a wife or a partner, an older brother or a sister, an uncle or an auntie, a teacher, a spiritual guide, a priest or pastor, and also professional experts like medical doctors. but also don't believe everybody. I remember when my wife and I were having our first child, we had a number of nurses, midwives coming in giving us recommendations of how to care for our newborn, and we'd never done it before. And if you actually listened to their advice, they actually contradicted each other, especially with feeding, with breastfeeding. So it's critical that you actually listen, but also at the same time, sometimes your instincts, your own knowledge and wisdom comes into play. So be critical, filter. And something I recommend, this book is brilliant. It's Richard Rohr's book called Falling Upward. It is available for free on Spotify, or you can view it either through Amazon's Kindle or buy the book. Get that book, it's awesome. Another resource which I use frequently is Oprah Winfrey's Super Soul Sunday, and she interviews a whole range of spiritual guides that really enlighten us about today. It's important you create eye time where you recharge your batteries. I don't mean just watching TV, maybe playing computer games, but you actually step out of the busyness and take time for yourself in some of the strategies I've recommended in this video. Also build a routine. So you can see the routine that I put in front of you. It helps move through liminal space if you've got a routine. The times you're going to have breakfast, you're going to do mindfulness, you're going to play games, exercise, music, etc. And in conclusion, when liminal spaces and times of crisis occur in our life, you may not realize that they are happening. It is important that we stay attuned with key people in our own life. These people help us to be increasingly aware and keep us grounded, thus level-headed. Is these liminal spaces, do they make us worry? In these liminal spaces, who do we trust and what do we trust? Do we think there's a rhinoceros, a rhino in the room, when actually there's not? What is real? Does our mind inflate the situation and make it worse? The human person is made up of different parts: the mind, the heart, the body, and the spirit. Sometimes we cannot trust our mind because it is racing away with our thinking. Then again, sometimes we cannot trust the heart because we are upset. And sometimes we cannot trust the body because we simply want to keep eating. At these times, we must learn to change, to move beyond what we know, and engage with the parts we do not know. So with the spirit, praying when we don't want to pray. With our heart, forgiving when we have been hurt. With the body, exercising when we don't want to exercise. With the mind, listening to somebody's view that we disagree with. And again with the spirit, trusting a wise elder when we are scared to do so. Do we recognize and seek a power beyond the self? Christians may term this God. Seeking a power beyond the self can actually help us get through the liminal space, connecting with the self, connecting with others, and connecting with God through the strategies herein help us to navigate the liminal space. Thus, recognizing that we are part of something much bigger than the self is one key to surviving the liminal space. And from Matthew's Gospel, see, I am sending you out like sheep into the midst of wolves. So be wise as serpents and as innocent as doves. And I just want to pray with you, and I encourage you to pray this prayer often. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. And so for those who want to have a look at some of the resources I've used today, please do so. Have a great day. Thank you very much.